My sister shaved my head to embarrass me before the trial. She thought she'd won. But then my fiancé entered the courtroom and calmly took the judge's seat. Her face drained of color, and the entire room fell silent. Hey there, I'm Kane, and I'm about to share a story I never thought I'd live through, let alone recount. My sister Celine pinned me down in a courthouse restroom and shaved my head, claiming it was about discipline, about maintaining order. But let's be real, it was her way of crushing me before I could even take the witness stand. What she didn't see coming was my fiancé, the man she dismissed as insignificant, striding into the courtroom and claiming the judge's seat. The room went still, her face drained of color, and when he started reading from the documents in front of him, she was utterly unprepared for what followed. But before I dive into what happened when the gavel dropped, I'm curious. Where are you reading this from? What's the time where you are? Let me know in the comments below. The morning air in Old Charleston carried the scent of damp stone and fog, clinging to the courthouse steps as my heels clicked with a confidence I didn't entirely feel. I clutched my leather portfolio, the same one I'd carried to my dissertation defense years ago, when I felt ready. Today, readiness was a distant memory. I was here to observe, maybe lend support, or so I'd convinced myself. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights. The security guard barely glanced at me, but others did. Their eyes darted my way, sharp and questioning, as if asking, "What's she doing here?" They were never overt, just fleeting looks from people I once called family. Across the atrium I saw them, my mother rigid, arms folded like she was shielding herself, and Celine, my older sister, poised in her ivory blazer, legs crossed, smirking like she'd already claimed victory in a game I didn't know I was playing. I kept moving. A woman at the registration desk beckoned me over, her voice neutral. "Name?" she asked. "Kaylin Monroe," I replied, offering a small smile. She scanned her list, frowned, and handed me a badge. I clipped it to my blazer without looking, then froze. In bold letters it read, K. "Nobody. This isn't right," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It should be Monroe, Kaylin Monroe." The woman shrugged, barely meeting my eyes. "That's what the list says, ma'am. If you want to speak to someone, you'll have to wait, but you can't enter without a badge." The words stung more than they should have, but I wasn't shocked. From across the room, Celine watched, raising her phone to snap a photo of my badge. Her screen flashed, and she tilted her head with a grin, like a kid reveling in a cruel prank. I didn't react. I nodded, turned away, and refused to give her the satisfaction she craved. I smoothed the badge against my chest, as if embracing it, but my hand lingered, pressing until the edges bit into my palm. It was as if someone had etched their view of me, worthless, invisible, onto that plastic. Maybe they believed it. Maybe they wanted me to believe it too. The hallway to the courtroom was eerily silent, each step heavier, like my shoes were sinking into the floor. My mother glanced away as I passed, a subtle but deliberate turn. This wasn't just a court case, it was a declaration. The badge was their message, and Celine had delivered it with flair. I took a seat on the far side, away from the family. As I settled, I glanced at the badge again. K. Nobody. Not a mistake, but a choice. Maybe I'd always been a shadow in this family. The quiet one, the one who agreed too readily, who stayed silent thinking it was strength. Maybe they saw my silence as fragility. I gripped the badge tighter, letting the edges dig in, a sharp reminder. Across the aisle, Celine whispered to our mother, then laughed behind her hand. They weren't even pretending anymore. The courtroom doors opened and people filed in. Heels tapping, papers shuffling, the occasional cough of someone disinterested or jaded. As Celine passed me, her perfume lingered like an unwelcome guest. She leaned close, her breath warm against my ear. "Nobody invited you, Kaylin. Remember that." She didn't wait for a reply, and I didn't offer one. I knew what this was. This wasn't their custody hearing, it was mine. The door closed with a soft thud that echoed in the crowded room. I sat near the back, close to the counsel table but far enough to fade into the background, if that was possible in a space built for scrutiny. The badge clung to my blazer like a brand I hadn't chosen. I sat up, crossed my legs, and tried to blend into the chair. The judge hadn't arrived, and I wasn't on the docket, not officially. I was here for a cousin's custody hearing, or so Celine had said. Now I doubted there ever was a cousin. The lights dimmed slightly as Celine's attorney rose, smoothing his suit with practiced flair. His voice was calm but weighted with authority. Your Honor, we'd like to open with a brief presentation to provide context about the environment of this case. That word context grated on me. A projector hummed and a screen flickered to life. My face appeared massive, caught mid-blink, shoulders slumped. Below it my badge K. Nobody. Gasps rippled through the room. Jurors shifted, one raising an eyebrow, another whispering. Celine's attorney gestured smoothly like a showman. This was taken this morning, showing how certain individuals have inserted themselves into these proceedings. Uninvited, unscheduled, and potentially unstable. Unstable. I gripped the bench, nails digging into the wood. I didn't move, didn't blink. Sweat gathered at my collarbone, but I kept my jaw steady. I wouldn't let them see me crack. The lawyer clicked to the next slide, metadata, timestamps. Something was wrong. The photo was timestamped 7:16 a.m., before court opened, before I'd arrived. I'd parked at 7:52. I'd checked the time, even snapped a photo of the courthouse myself. My throat tightened. They'd faked it. Celine or someone in her orbit had doctored the metadata. This wasn't just humiliation, it was a setup. The judge's voice cut through. Is Miss Monroe on the witness list? The attorney's smile was too smug. No, Your Honor. She showed up on her own wearing that badge and well? He trailed off as if reluctant to finish. You can't teach boundaries. I looked at Celine. She didn't meet my gaze, she didn't need to. She knew I'd look. She adjusted her skirt, staring at the screen like it was her masterpiece. I'd seen this before. At 16, during our joint birthday party, Celine forgot my name on the invitations. The whole class thought it was her day alone, and she never corrected them. I ate cake on the backyard swing set, pretending it didn't hurt to be erased. This courtroom moment was that pain amplified public. But I wasn't 16 anymore and I wasn't vanishing. I closed my eyes not to cry but to recalibrate. The room buzzed but I was analyzing. Then I noticed him. A man in the back corner, arms folded, no notes, no laptop. His suit was worn but tidy, his eyes fixed on Celine, unblinking, unsmiling. He wasn't pressed, didn't whisper to anyone. He just watched like someone who'd seen her mask slip before. When Celine spoke, he leaned forward, not for the story, but for the moment she'd falter. Before I could place him, a clerk approached the judge with a sealed envelope. Plain, no markings, just stark and heavy. The judge's brow creased. This wasn't planned. Your Honor, the clerk said softly. This was delivered, marked urgent, anonymous sender. The judge opened it cautiously, his eyes scanning, then lingering too long. He glanced at me briefly before addressing the court reporter. Record this as an addendum to the hearing exhibits. He tapped the document twice, then sighed. Miss Monroe, are you aware of a psychological evaluation in your name from the Charleston Mental Health Institute, dated November 2012? My pulse stuttered. That place, that year, I hadn't spoken of it in over a decade. It wasn't therapy, wasn't healing. It was silence packaged in clinical forms. The attorney stood, his smile too polished. Your Honor, we submit this to provide context on Miss Monroe's mental stability. It was uncovered by a concerned party and speaks for itself. The projector flipped to a new page. Cold, clinical, emotional instability, behavioral dysregulation. The words weren't mine, weren't me. I wasn't unstable. I was 22, locked out in a snowstorm by Celine barefoot, sobbing as she bolted the door and ignored my calls. Her friends laughed from the window, saying I'd be fine, that I always overreacted. I collapsed on the steps, half frozen, until a neighbor called an ambulance. The next day my mother whispered, "This is what happens when you overreact. People will think you're crazy. Do you want that?" She drove me to a hospital an hour away, signed the papers. I stayed 72 hours. When I returned, no one mentioned it, not even me. Until now. My heart hammered but my face stayed still. I wouldn't let Celine see me break. She sat composed, hands folded, a faint smirk tugging at her lips, like this was her magnum opus. This wasn't therapy, it was erasure, rewriting my survival as shame. My mother, 2 rows behind, clutched her purse, eyes down. Of course. The judge asked if I had a response. I stood, voice shaky but firm. That file was created without my consent. I was never diagnosed. I was placed there by family to avoid scrutiny, not because I was a danger. The real danger was being locked out in a storm for existing. A murmur spread. The judge nodded, noting my statement for the record. No judgment, just procedure. In court, facts don't matter, only what's written. As I sat, the man in the back stood, moving with purpose. He approached the bailiff, whispered, and the bailiff nodded to the judge. The judge's eyes narrowed. Miss Monroe, please stay seated. There's been a development. Celine's head snapped around, fear flickering in her eyes for the first time. The judge tapped his gavel twice, not to close but to pause. We'll take a brief recess. Counselors and parties join me in chambers. Vincent Wexler moved with military precision, his coat unwrinkled, eyes steady. He passed Celine without a glance, but she flinched. In the judicial chamber, the wood felt ancient, unpolished by spectacle. The judge closed the door. Mr. Wexler, I assume you're not here for leisure. Vincent placed a sealed manila envelope on the desk, a faint Department of Justice watermark catching the light. Review this before proceeding, he said evenly. It concerns the misuse of sealed federal records, namely Exhibit 14B, used to discredit Miss Kaylin Monroe. Celine opened her mouth, but the judge silenced her. You're saying Exhibit 14B was illegally obtained? Vincent tapped the envelope. She used unassigned court system login credentials. We've tracked flagged queries under Judge Harmon's staff access for 2 months. All linked to this hearing. All tied to Miss Celine Monroe. I didn't speak, didn't breathe. Celine's face hardened. This is absurd, she snapped. You can't barge in with vague accusations. Vincent's voice was calm but cutting. I'm not accusing. I'm confirming documented evidence. You accessed sealed HIPAA-protected mental health records. A federal offense. The room stilled. Vincent turned to me slightly, his tone steady. We've been investigating ethical violations tied to Miss Monroe's legal activities. This hearing gave us cause to broaden our scope. Celine's attorney finally spoke. We'll need time to review evidence. Vincent opened the packet, revealing Celine's name, login credentials, and access files, including mine. This isn't ambiguous, he said. It's law. Miss Monroe's actions show a pattern of manipulation, falsifying metadata, and weaponizing sealed documents for personal gain. Then he turned to me. I'm not here to defend you, Miss Monroe. I'm here to expose her. Something shifted, not relief, not victory, just clarity. For years I doubted my memories, wondered if I'd exaggerated. But here it was, paper, dates, facts. Celine wasn't finished. She turned to me, voice low and sharp. You think I'm scared of you? I built this courtroom. You're just a footnote I let linger too long. My hands clenched, but I stepped closer, voice steady. Then it's time to tear it down. The hallway felt colder as I left chambers, my heels echoing on the marble. Celine leaned against the wall, calm, almost amused. Cute show back there, she said, voice syrupy. But one signature, and I can have you held for a 72-hour psych eval. Sure you want to keep pushing? Her words stung, but no one intervened. Power doesn't need to shout. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Celine smiled wider. Didn't think so. She brushed past, victorious again. I didn't know where I was going until I reached the courthouse steps. The sun was harsh, too bright for the dimness inside me. I sat on a bench under a bare tree, pigeons scuffling nearby. A memory hit, 22, a brutal snowstorm, locked out of our apartment because Celine forgot. I was home. I pounded on the door for 30 minutes before a neighbor let me in. That night, my first panic attack. My mother called it drama. A week later, I was in therapy, not to heal, to be silenced. Celine doesn't lie, my mother said. She just remembers better. I pulled out my phone, thumb over Langston's contact. I typed, maybe it's not worth it, then stared at the cursor. You okay, ma'am? A young woman stood nearby, offering a water bottle. Her badge read Naira, her eyes kind but cautious. I saw what happened. That woman, your sister. She treats people like tissue paper, uses them, tosses them. I took the bottle. You work for her? Interned. Not anymore. She paused. You haven't let her win yet. Don't. Her words echoed advice I'd given a college freshman whose roommate destroyed her art project out of spite. I didn't recall her name, but I remembered her tears and her smile when I told her not to surrender her victory to someone louder. I stood unsteady but resolute. Naira watched. "Whatever you do, make it hurt," she said, half joking, half hopeful. I nodded. "It won't just hurt, it'll echo." I dialed Langston. He answered instantly. "Talk to me." "I'm ready to file the motion," I said. "Whistleblower status, no redactions." Pause, then his voice firm. "About time, Monroe." The line went dead. Back in the courtroom, the air had changed. The chatter was gone, the judge's assistant clearing out reporters and visitors for a closed session. Langston nodded subtly as I sat, his calm grounding me. Celine's attorney stood, requesting an expert witness for character context. My chest tightened. The doors opened and Dr. Adrian Wolfe entered, a psychiatrist with a polished demeanor. My stomach churned. I'd heard his name years ago at Harvard, but I'd never met him, never been his patient. "I was consulted regarding a fellow, Kaylin Monroe," Wolfe began, "for erratic behavior, emotional dysregulation, and institutional defiance." Murmurs spread. I couldn't breathe. Langston said, "Objection," but the judge allowed Wolfe to continue. Celine watched me, hands folded, gaze steady like she knew the ending. Wolfe said I'd been advised to take leave, citing paranoia and displacement. My pulse roared. Langston slid me an envelope, a letter from Professor Laya Marks, my fellowship director, stating I was never evaluated, never met psychiatric staff. Any claim otherwise was false. The judge asked if I had evidence. I stood. "Your Honor, I request permission to present sealed academic records, including grievances and statements, and to read them myself." After a long pause, he nodded. My hands were cold, but I'd memorized every word. I, Kaylin Monroe, filed a harassment complaint against 3 peers on March 17, 2014. No action was taken. On May 9, 2014, I was treated for a stress-induced ulcer after work sabotage. I was told I overreacted. Emails between Professor Marks and the grant committee note interpersonal targeting, with me as the target. The room was silent, my voice the only sound. I reached the final page. I was told, "You always make things harder than they need to be." That wasn't a diagnosis, it was a warning. I looked at Celine, folding the record shut. Outside, the early fall breeze stirred the live oaks on Broad Street. I stood at the courthouse steps, my breath visible in the cool air. The silence was calming. I hadn't slept much since the hearing, but I didn't wake feeling diminished. In the lobby, I overheard clerks whispering, "Did you hear who's presiding? Judge Merrill's out sick. Monroe's on the bench now." My stomach flipped. "Not me, Langston." He entered in robes, stoic, unrecognizable from the man who traced constellations on my back at 2 a.m. Celine laughed, incredulous. "This is a joke, right? Her fiancé decides the case." Langston's voice was calm. "I filed a recusal from familial affiliations 3 weeks ago. My role is procedural, confirmed by the clerk's office. Shall we proceed?" Celine's confidence wavered. Langston introduced an audit of the Monroe Family Trust, revealing $480,000 funneled through shell companies tied to Celine's accounts, using my frozen trust portion as collateral. The court referred the matter to the Department of Justice for investigation. Celine flinched, eyes searching for an escape. Langston left without looking at me. In the glass panel by the door, my reflection looked different. Not small, not waiting. I belonged not because I shouted, but because I endured, proved, and refused to vanish. As the courtroom emptied, Celine's attorney requested an emergency injunction, claiming bias due to Langston's relationship with me. Celine smiled, electric, like she'd cornered me again. Judge Margaret Evelyn Rodas took oversight. I handed the clerk a sealed envelope. "Your Honor, this affidavit, notarized 2 months before my father's death, should be entered into the sealed record." Rodas opened it, reading aloud. "I, Franklin J. Monroe, declare that the Monroe Women's Education Fund was Kaylin Monroe's creation. I insisted Celine be its face to protect the family's image and secure donors. I regret this. I took from Kaylin what she built." Celine stood, shouting, "This is fake." Rodas silenced her. "The motion to suspend is denied. The affidavit is valid." Miss Celine Monroe is removed from the funds documents effective immediately. You had the spotlight, but the light was never yours. Celine sat, her attorney deflated. The clerk handed me the revised articles of incorporation, my name as founder. I took it silently. The truth had spoken louder than I could. The sun dipped, casting amber across the benches. Celine looked smaller exposed. I didn't feel victorious, just unburdened, like I'd set down stones I'd carried for years. Truth isn't a spectacle. It's a weight undeniable when it lands. Power isn't loud. It's holding the truth until it's too heavy to ignore. 3 weeks later, the courthouse was a quieter memory. My name was cleared, my work restored, my rights mine again. Freedom was new, something I was learning to hold. I arrived early at the rebuilt community center. The air fresh with paint and possibility. The walls soft gray, awaited art from the girls who'd soon fill the space. I touched door frames, window ledges, the bulletin board, unbraced for shadows. It was mine not just legally, in truth. Celine hadn't apologized, hadn't looked at me since the ruling. She'd held a press conference, blaming miscommunication and shifting culture. Never mentioning me. I declined media offers and book deals. Let her spin. I was done defending. Langston visited once, standing beside me as staff prepped art tables. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked. I exhaled. I need to find who I am without being rescued. Even by someone who meant well. He nodded, touched my shoulder and left. Some things are meant to be remembered, not rebuilt. In the art room, girls worked under Ari, a young volunteer. A girl maybe 9 sat alone folding red paper. She looked up, smiled shyly, and offered me a paper crane, its wings slightly uneven but earnest. I froze. Years ago, I'd given Celine a crane after her debate win, a sisterly gesture. She'd laughed, crumpled it, called it weird. Now a child offered me the same, no mockery, just care. "I make them when I feel calm," she said. "Maybe you needed one." I nodded, taking it gently. Maybe I did. Outside, the sun climbed, gilding the sidewalk. I stepped out, crane in hand, sunlight on my face. I didn't need to explain to Celine, Langston, the media, or the past. Healing doesn't shout. Sometimes it folds into a small red crane and whispers, "You can begin again." I tucked it close and walked into the light.